Major League Journeymen coming off conference championships. We have an Eastern Conference crown, New York Red Bull, represented by the stalwart Dax McCarty, A-lister, and we have a Western Conference champion. The LA Galaxy have returned to their perch atop the league, and of course, one of its most iconic stars, Alan Gordon. What a stud. Let's jump in because we got a lot to talk about because there are other variables that are swirling around this game. Obviously, Puj is lost to ACL. That is a crazy, crazy significant loss for this Galaxy and is going to completely change the complexion of the game. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in.
99, 100. Major League Journeymen.
Thank you. I was out of breath. I had to finish my push-ups. Holy smoke. 100 push-ups is a lot. Gordo.
And by finish your push-ups, you mean do what Ron Burgundy did, where he
my favorite, my daughter. 1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100. She loves it.
Perfect.
She's also 6, and it's her. I mean, she's been using it on literally everything these days. I'll tell you what, though, Major League Journeyman, 2 for 2, or I guess, what is that, 6 for 6? Each of us spot on with the conference championships. Western Conference Championship, LA Galaxy picked across the board. Eastern Conference Championship picked New York Red Bull in the upset across the board. Alan Gordon, Dax McCarty, Dan Gargan, the Major League Journeymen are flawless. And now, I will say, I actually think it's going to be a tougher pick this in the final with Ricky Puj out with an ACL. When I was watching the games, my takeaways were Red Bull, comfortable, LA Galaxy or Seattle Sounders are going to absolutely crush whoever comes out of the Eastern Conference final. And then I still felt the same after watching the game. But then the news comes out that Ricky is out, which I think we've touched on a number of times this season. The Galaxy are a completely different team with or without him. Before we jump into that, I do want to start. Let's go chronologically, right? Let's jump in to the Eastern Conference final. Dax, I wanted to kick it off to you just because you are the New York Red Bull homer that you are, while also soon to be back in as a permanent resident of Florida. And I'm expecting an attendee of some Orlando games, so you can't slander them too hard. But did this play out how you were expecting it to play out from the start?
Yeah, man, pretty much to a T. And before we start, I'm disappointed that you didn't compliment my haircut and my fresh shave. Feel like it probably deserved it. I think I look about 10 years younger. I know my wife is thrilled for sure.
Dude, Gordo, the self-esteem issues are already at play. This guy's
I'm very insecure now that I'm not a pro athlete.
Oh my God. A week in, he's already insecure.
I'm very insecure now that I'm not a pro athlete anymore. Please build me up more. So anyways, yes, the Orlando game was exactly, I think, how all of us saw it playing out. And it's not like us to agree on much. We really don't. And that's all pretty authentic. This one, we all were pretty staunch in thinking that the Red Bulls were going to win this game. Mm-hmm. And it played out exactly how we thought it would. And it was a cagey game. It played exactly on the Red Bulls' terms. Orlando was minorly threatening. I think Coronel had to make one big save in the first half on Facundo Torres, who probably should have done better. But by and large, I felt like Red Bull was not sleepwalking through the game, but they were just so comfortable. And it's this newfound confidence that they have in their formation they're playing. I think their coach deserves a lot of credit, Sandro Schwartz. I mean, if you guys know how it was when we talked about Red Bull, we were like, there's nothing there. There's nothing compelling about this team. Forsberg was a compelling signing, and he was good while he played, but he was injured for half the season. And when he was injured, they were just not good. And I think everyone in Red Bull land, especially the fans and analysts alike, were like, all right, they're just waiting for the season to end to maybe do what they all make the playoffs, go one and done, and then, look towards the offseason. But this team has found something, kind of like we had in Atlanta.
Yep.
feel like Red Bull has found something and even take it up a notch because they're more secure in who they are. And I think they have more about them going forward. They're more dangerous than we were. So look, you add all that up, and Red Bull wasn't great, but Orlando they did enough to win the game, and they never really felt threatened. I always thought that a goal from them was coming off a set piece or a transition moment, came off a set piece. Orlando maybe a little hard done by. I thought Reyes, the guy who actually scored the goal, he should have been sent off for a second yellow. Dan, I remember we
Yeah. He certainly could have been. That would have been an easy one.
That's a nitpick going through the game. I just don't think Orlando did enough. I just don't think Orlando.
Well, you mentioned it. Facu Torres should have scored. He should have scored early in that game, early in the first half. He had that opportunity where they get who was it? Angulo, I think, catches a break down the left-hand side, plays it across instead of shooting, and Facu Torres was it Ojeda that caught that break? And so he catches that, but dude, Torres, that's got to be in the back of the net. He's your goal scorer. He's your guy. He has to put that away. And when they didn't put that away, it almost galvanized exactly what you're talking about with Red Bull's system, with their identity, with all those things. Because as good as Forsberg is, who for me is fantastic, I think he fits and he works and he does all those things. I actually am going to disagree with you slightly. I think that they are. Confused is probably a stretch, but disjointed in their attack. I don't really see them having a ton there. Now, he can certainly create pretty much out of thin air, but Lewis Morgan in the 9, he's not a 9. He's a winger. I think that they were a little all over the shop. I don't really think that they caused Orlando any problems, but they are very comfortable with that. They're very comfortable with who they are. They're very comfortable with withstanding pressure. Defensively, thought they were really good. I really liked Edelman. I thought he chewed up a ton of ground in that defensive midfield position. He partnered with Stroud's like an agitator. He does enough defensively. Their right side, Harper and Nealis were fantastic. Nealis, by the way, Georgetown Hoya, thank you very much. Hoya, he had a great game. Gordo, when you watch Red Bull play as an attacking player, Orlando's got a ton of attacking options, right? They have creatives, they have finishers, they have goal scorers. You bring in McGuire, they have like a little bit of grit. They have different ways that they can hurt you. Did you think that New York was ever really challenged in that second half when it is crunch time? It's Eastern Conference Championship. You got 45 minutes to get your goal back. You have to perform at home. Did you feel like they were ever stressed?
I didn't. I caught probably the last 30 minutes of that game. We were talking back and forth, and the one thing that stuck out to me, and it didn't have to do with tactics or anything like that. It had to do with composure. I mean, Dax brought it up, and it was very apparent.
Dax did not bring it up. Gargs brought it up.
Gargs brought it up. Okay, you can take credit again. But it was very apparent they were not playing like somebody or a team that had been there before, and that is just the plain fact. They were at home, and they played themselves out of the game because they were too emotionally charged. They were freaking out at every call. They never looked comfortable. They never looked like, listen, leave the ref alone. Let's play our soccer. We're the better team. We're going to score a goal because we have all these weapons. Not once did I feel like they were confident that they were going to win that game. They were flipping out. And
losing their minds.
And Oscar was probably flipping out on the sideline. You could see the crowd was flipping out. Like the whole stadium was completely out of control. And you have to have composure in those moments in big games and know that, hey, if we keep doing our game plan and what we're doing, then it's going to come. And by teams that have been there before, they have that sense, right? And to not to jump forward to Seattle, we'll get there. Seattle has been there before, and they look totally composed. They didn't come out with the win, but they weren't freaking out everywhere, and they gave themselves some opportunities in the end of the game to maybe nick a goal. We'll get to that, but Orlando, that was the big takeaway for me, is they just didn't act like they had been there before.
So we all three of us took a side that that we've commented on a number of times as really not having a ton of bite to them, really not having a huge identity, and a willingness for all of us to say, you know what, they're going to go into Orlando, that we have commented on how dangerous they can be. They're going to go into Orlando and they're going to win this game, which is, now looking back on it, do you think that that's an indictment of Orlando and their ability to win the big game, maybe by what we're talking about in terms of the leadership and Oscar Pareja, who's been a coach for a long time? He's done a lot of really good things, but I think in witnessing some of these teams that he coaches, they are incredibly emotional. They are not your typical composed team. And when you think about playoff teams, when you think about battle-tested teams, there has to be a mindset that is 100% resilient onto the next play. Is this, Dax, is this an indictment of Orlando, or is this, not a coronation of New York, but maybe they have a chance here in the final against the Galaxy? Are they that battle-tested mindset?
As far as Orlando goes, this is my thought on them and was throughout the entire season. They do a lot of things pretty good, and they have some elite pieces, but they don't do anything great. And the reason why they lost this game is because Red Bull does one thing great, and they have done one thing great for a while now, and that's defend. And that is be very secure in who you are and what you're about. Red Bull knows exactly what they want. There's not one time in that game that Carlos Coronel put the ball down and made a 10-yard pass out of the back on a goal kick. Every single time he got the ball, he took 10, 15 seconds off the clock. He got his center backs up the field, and he put it as far as he could, and they fought for second balls, and they won second balls, and they frustrated Orlando, and Orlando just could not handle it. When you have a game of teams with diametrically opposing ideas, the team that puts the game on their terms more is the team that usually wins the game. That's just, to break it down as simply as I can, that's usually how it goes. And to your point about Oscar, I think he's one of the most successful regular season coaches in MLS history. He has to be. He's kind of like my Red Bull teams. But when it comes to the playoffs, there is something in his message or in his tactics or in his DNA that does not allow his teams to get over that playoff hump. I think he's going to be able to. I think he's a great coach. I think he's fantastic. But to your point about what is it really with Orlando, they do a lot of things good. They don't do any one thing great. And the reason why they lost this game is because Facundo Torres, their best player, he didn't take his chance. And Red Bull's best player throughout these whole playoffs and throughout the whole second part of the season has been their goalkeeper, Carlos Coronel. I mean, to me, the playoffs have kind of been a story of goalkeepers. I don't want to open this up to a more macro view, but if you look at Brad Guzan, if you look at Matt Fries, who was brilliant, if you look at Coronel, who was fantastic, if you look at Stephen Fry, who was excellent for Seattle, like this playoff run for me has
John
been
McCarthy picks one out of the corner.
Yeah, it's been more about the goalkeeper than it has been any beautiful attacking play. And look, Red Bull was never. I always thought Red Bull.
Take the Galaxy out of that because they did they had 19 goals heading into
very true
the conference final.
Take the Galaxy out of that.
Your point is well taken. It has been goalkeeper driven. You're right. Defensive even. I think across the board. Orlando, they are an interesting case study, and I think that they, we just saw coaches relieve, specifically Jim Curtin, because he had been there long enough, and they felt like they needed a new voice. We feel like we could see that with Orlando.
No chance.
No chance.
I don't. No. I don't. I mean, you look at.
Orlando would be dumb to move on from Oscar.
Yeah,
we said the same thing about
Oscar
Philadelphia.
Orlando had failed to make the playoffs time and time again. He gets them in the playoffs for the first time. He wins the Open Cup for them, so he wins their first trophy, and now he's got them to a conference final, which says the trend is going up, and he is doing some good things. However, in this, like last year, this time, when I was watching Orlando, and I think it was Leagues Cup, when they made the run in the Leagues Cup, I was like, damn. This team is for real. This team is dangerous, and they've been on my radar since. For some reason, I'm not sure why, for some reason in this playoff run, they just didn't have that that same sort of excitement and explosion offensively, even though they do have the pieces to really, that's why I picked the Red Bulls. I saw their last game versus who'd they beat? Was it you guys? Was it Atlanta?
No, NYCFC.
And it just didn't look like they were that dangerous, right?
Are they just? Do you think they're exhausted, Gordo? Do you think they're just like emotionally fatigued? I feel like Oscar is one of those kind of motivational coaches, right? Like, is he just constantly in their ass all season long that gets them fired up, and then they go out? But then once you hit the conference finals, or maybe earlier, you're starting to, that message is starting to wear.
That could certainly be the case. We know Precky's that type of coach as well, and they're very similar for what I know of them. I've not been in a locker room with them, but we know them well enough and talk to enough guys to know that it is a lot on the mental, emotional side going through a whole season with those coaches that are that demanding. And that could be the case. They still made to the conference final. I'm not going to say that the season was a total waste and that he should be let go. I'm not saying that at all. I think their trajectory is going up, but they got to figure something out when it comes to the postseason rather than doing what they did this season.
I also think they need to figure something out with regard to their attack, because to me, you can't. Duncan McGuire, he needs to play.
I was kind of shocked that he wasn't on the field.
You reward this. First of all, he has interest from Europe. He has interest from like pretty reputable teams in England in the championship. So you don't sell him for a couple $1 million, and then you give him a new contract. Like, he needs to be on the field more. And I think Ramiro Enrique was great for them. And so was Ojeda. When Ojeda moved to the 10 for them, that's when they started winning. I don't see how you can't evolve and figure out a way to get him on the field, because for me, he's the prototypical perfect MLS striker. He's like a Brian White. For me, he's like Brian White 2.0. He's not gonna sit. He's not gonna sit there and wow you and score 25 goals a season, but he will consistently get you 15 goals, and he will consistently be an absolute menace.
You know what he's going to do, Dax? He's going to occupy the two center backs, so your playmakers can find and pop into those holes.
I think that's a real big question mark for them going into the offseason, because look, Ramiro Enrique is a good player. Ojeda's a good player. The winger Angulo is a good player. Facundo Torres is your best player. So this is a challenge for them. How do you fit your best players into the team? And I think even against us, right? It just, like, I could feel they were dominating us in certain aspects of the game. We never really were severely threatened or under a ton of pressure from an attacking standpoint from their point. And so it was the same against Red Bull. And in these biggest games, well, you need to be able to threaten in some ways, right? And so I just think Duncan McGuire is going to have to Oscar is going to have to find a way to get him on the field more.
You know what? I also thought that I didn't, thinking back on it now, their squad really attacks in halves. Like, they attack with those front four, front five, and then they're just massive gaps in the middle of the field, because Cartagena, Araujo, they don't really step up into those and fill that space. They kind of sit and they wait. Yeah, which was, I don't know. I feel like it's tough to overwhelm with numerical superiority when you're just attacking in ones, which is what it seemed like they did.
Yeah, I don't think Orlando's far off. I think Oscar. Look, you continue to retool his toolbox and you give him more pieces. He's going to continue to figure out ways to win in this league, and then it's just a matter of his tactical prowess and his big players stepping up in the playoffs. I mean, look, Red Bull wasn't great, but they just did enough to win the game. That's exactly how that game played out, and it's exactly what we called.
So we got all that right. Moving on. Red Bull moves on. Also, now you got Seattle in LA against the Galaxy. We all took the Galaxy. I don't know how you guys felt. After 45 minutes of that game, did you feel like the Galaxy were guaranteed to win? I know that I did not. I was a little concerned. I was a little concerned at halftime about the way that the Galaxy approached the first half. Some of the vulnerabilities that they were definitely showing. but also the comfort that Seattle was displaying, which, I think both you guys mentioned it, battle tested, championship tested, completely comfortable in high pressure environments. The atmosphere in LA was fantastic. You could hear it. It was
like the good old days, huh?
Dude, it did feel like the good old days. It was a star-studded environment. Dax, when you think about the way that Seattle approached the game, is there anything that you would have changed had you been tasked with that assignment?
No.
Not one thing.
No, I thought Schmetzer got it spot on, like he's done throughout the entire playoffs.
Yep.
I thought that their left winger, Manungu, or whatever his name is, I don't even know it.
Dude, he's the kid that was tearing Yamane apart.
He was fantastic. I mean, Georgie Manungu. Well, where did this guy come from? And so
he was on the Tacoma Defiance last year.
This is what I'm saying about Schmetzer is, look, we doubted him earlier this year, hand up, all of us did. And I think for good reason, we could question that because they were struggling. He has found a way to just get the most out of this team. And honestly, there is something about teams in this league that know how to win, and they have that championship mentality and that mindset. Seattle has that. Seattle is battle tested. We've talked about it, and they have found a way to get better as the season goes on. And look, their big players step up when they need to. Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, Albert Rusnak, these guys that have been around MLS for a long time, and these guys that maybe they're not talked about with the superstars. They're not talked about as the best players in the league, but you know what they do? They just win consistently. And Schmetzer is a part of that conversation. He has to be. So when you look at this game, I texted both of you guys. Probably we're in our group chat 25 minutes into the game, and I said, Seattle looks comfortable. Dare I say, Seattle looks comfortable, and they don't look bothered. They don't look bothered by what LA is presenting them. And actually, if you look at Seattle, Schmetzer, it's very easy to look at an attacking juggernaut like the Galaxy and go, all right, 5 in the back. We're going to do exactly what we did in LA. We're going to sit deep. We're going to hit on the count. Schmetzer was like, nope, I've got Nuhu back. And I'm going to let Nuhu go with Gabriel Peck one-on-one, who, if you're going to pick one player in MLS to take on Peck one-on-one, Nuhu's probably at the top of that list. And then you just have to hope that Rusnak and Jordan Morris and maybe this kid De La Vega can come up with a little bit of magic. I mean, that was the tactical plan. We don't have to expose ourselves. Let's try to hit them on the break. Let's try to be clean. And honestly, they were totally comfortable. I think the Galaxy, let me look at this real quick. The Galaxy had 13 shots and less than one expected goal, which I understand how you guys feel about XG, but it does tell a story about are you getting good shots? Are you dominating? Where is Stephen Fry having to stand on his head? Galaxy weren't getting good shots. Stephen Fry wasn't having to stand on his head. No. And Seattle looked like the more likely team to score. So
Seattle was way more threatening in the first half.
They were way more threatening. And I just felt look, if this game goes to extra time and penalties, Seattle's going to be thrilled. They're probably going to win the game. Alex Roldan, one little brain fart, one mistake. And that's the thing in against a team like the Galaxy. If you lose your focus for 1 second, they do have the horses to punish you. And that was the story of the game. That's what happened. Ricky Puig on one leg, fantastic pass, and Joveljic is a killer. That's what he is. He's a stone-cold killer. If you give him a chance, he's going to bury it. That was the story of the game. I thought Seattle was the better team.
That's saying something. Gordo, You picked the Galaxy at the beginning of the year to make the biggest transformation. So your you are riding with a significant amount of house money right now. When you saw the first half, because I want to keep it in halves here, because I do think that the game completely changed in the second half. Were you surprised at maybe just at how commanding Seattle was in containing or bottling up the Galaxy? Or did you write it off as this is a final, it's going to be tight, and they haven't found their stride?
No, I thought the opposite. I thought to Dax's point, I thought Schmetzer and the game plan was perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect. They were willing early just to be like, listen, we are a really good defensive team. You're going to have to come through us. And I think as the minutes went on in that first half, the Galaxy really ran out of ideas. As good as they are in possession, I still think that they are more dangerous on the counter, right? They need space. They need Paintsill. They need space for Paintsill to go. And he was a ghost with no space. He doesn't come in. He doesn't connect. He wants to run. I think that Peck and Poot and Ricky are really good at combining. Didn't really see a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of space in there. So they played it perfect, and they almost played them. Galaxy looked stunned because then Seattle, after, drawing that line in the sand and saying, hey, we're good right here. We can defend at the top of our box. Come, you can have possession. And then the Galaxy kind of get, stunned a little bit. So they're not really running at full pace. They're really kind of playing it slow across. Nothing really happening. And then Seattle says, okay, now we're ready. They caught them off guard. And then they were on the attack and they were keeping the ball. And the Galaxy couldn't even get close to the ball for periods of that first half. It was really surprising. So I think, the game plan was great, and the momentum, they took that momentum. They said, hey, we're going to weather the storm early. And then they just took that momentum right from them. And then they ended up on their half. Seattle's got their only issue is their attack is not great, right? Yep. I did think, Jordan Morris, I don't think he's a true number 9. He's done a good job being up there, whatever. It's sad to see Rui Diaz not the player he used to be, because then we would have a real game, if it was old Rui. But I think that what I was thinking about was it was a really interesting matchup of midfields, because I think that you could argue that, without Miami, the Galaxy have the best midfield in the league, right? But then I start looking, Roldan, Rusnik, and the players that they had in the midfield, they're equally as good. Not as star-studded, like Dak said, but they're very smart. And then they bring in, Powell.
João Paulo. They're different from a player profile,
in a very
but they are
different way. And they were like the perfect, offset of midfields, just because how experienced they are, how smart they are, and all that. So it was a good matchup. Ultimately, I thought heading into the second half, I thought the Galaxy were in big trouble, because when games play out like that, it started to feel like this was going to be a Seattle who was really comfortable defensively. Galaxy didn't have it on the night, and they were going to nick one. They were going to find one to nick, just like they did, late in the game, and to get themselves into the final. It just started to feel like that, and I think that that goal and that one play was everything. It was the whole game. It was everything, and they needed something special in that game, which ultimately you have to have somebody step up to get you to a final in the conference final or beyond, or in the playoffs. Period. Like Juninho did it for us in 2010. Seattle was all over us. We're there. Juninho takes one moment and he hits it off the post, and it goes in, and we get to the final to win the cup. There's got to be one moment. Seattle didn't get it. Galaxy did, and they're ultimately in the final, and that's what it takes in a game like that.
Dax, what did you think about the substitution that Greg makes at halftime, taking out Royce and putting Delgado in?
Yeah, I thought the Galaxy, the reason why I thought it looked disjointed in the first half was I thought their spacing was all wrong. I thought it was very strange, and I texted you guys actually that Greg must have a lot of faith in Cerrillo, who is a good player, but. When you have Puig, who's got license to go anywhere, and he does not defend, and you have Marco Royce, who's by and large a winger, who is essentially, he's a great player, but he can play anywhere across the front 5. But he's by and large, he's been a winger basically his whole career. And those are your 2 8s. You're asking a lot of Cerrillo. And when you can't find space, it was like Gordo was saying, there was just not a lot of space for these guys to combine and to play. And it looked disjointed. It looked a little ponderous. All right, well, you know what? We're going side to side here. We're not penetrating because there's nowhere to go, right?
Well, you saw there was some frustration. I mean, Puig has a go at Paintsill at some point there because they're stepping on each other's toes.
Correct. Yeah. So I think Royce. I think Greg came out after the game because I texted you guys is this injury related or is this just tactical? Because if it was just tactical, you have to imagine a big player like Royce not going to be too happy about that. But if if he was feeling something after a couple minutes, he looked off. He didn't look effective. And so obviously Greg saw that and needed to make the change. And I actually thought, Mark Delgado, look, I mean, this is a guy, again, who Greg trusts. And when the Galaxy have looked good and been at their best, Delgado's been on the field. He's not a 100%. He's not a guy that needs a lot of touch. Some of these other,
but he's their motor. He's
the engine in there, and he keeps things balanced for them. If you don't have players that give you balance on both sides of the ball, then it just looks disjointed. And so I thought it changed, and LA looked a little better after that substitution. But by and large, it seemed injury related. I mean, look, we'll look forward. We'll look towards MLS Cup in a little bit, but like, big decision for Greg to make. Like, who comes in for Puig? Is Royce fit enough to play? I think Delgado has to be on the field. But for me, it was the right move by Greg. He made the right tactical substitution, but again, without a mistake from Alex Roldan, he's a good player, and everyone makes a mistake every now and then. But you get punished in these big games, like Gordo said. You guys know this. When the biggest
you can't make mistakes.
You cannot make
mistakes in those games.
Both these games were 1-0 games. They were that's a fact, and that's what they looked like. And look, as much as we don't want to think it, MLS Cup is probably going to look the same, and it's probably going to be testy, and it's going to be combative, and these games don't always look great. And so if you make a mistake, you could be buried, and that's exactly what happened in this game. And it's kind of a shame. Well, the league is thinking they're lucky stars. I'll tell you that much. A Seattle Sounders with minimal superstars in New York Red Bull final is not what the league wanted. And so the league is very happy about what happened. I think the league would be super thrilled if this was the final back in like 2013.
I'll tell you what.
I mean, to have another LA or the LA Galaxy and having two LA teams that are back to the status that I think the league wanted LA's to be in, that's massive because the Galaxy are back, and it is clear they are back. They're winning, number one, but they also have bona fide stars. I mean, we haven't even talked about Joveljic, which is pretty wild. I don't know if you guys saw his interview, a question who, to be honest, I texted him after the game. I thought he was fantastic. I thought question in a moment that is really difficult to manage, those interviews after the game, also the presentation. Dude, I was really impressed, man, for a guy that doesn't have, decades, of experience on camera and in those moments. I thought he handled them really, really, really well.
I didn't see. But, was he getting food?
No, dude, he did great, man. His timing was really good. His words were good. His questions were good. Like the engagement with the players, he moved things along. It was pretty impressive.
Was it on field post game interviews, just like bopping around?
Yes.
And he did the pregame. He did like a little pregame cert right before, and I thought he was good as well. And I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, he had it all. He had it all together. He had it all buttoned up. You guys know I couldn't do that. I could hardly do this, but I thought he did really well.
Different strokes for different folks, Gordo.
I brought that up though because I did watch him interview Joveljic, and Joveljic is like he's one step away from talking about himself in the third person, which I love. Like I genuinely love it. But
Joveljic will score goals. Give him goals.
Dude, he has that about him. Hey, but as a goal scorer, like what more could you want? What more could you want? You have to have that confidence. And the Galaxy, I think they have stars. They are a star-driven club. They've always been a star-driven club, and I think that they're back to that. The one thing that you guys didn't mention, which I think we need to talk about, because as we look towards the final, Marky Delgado is one of the few players within that lineup that actually has real MLS game and championship experience. And he, in their biggest game of the season, isn't on the field. I think he has to be on the field in the final.
Yeah.
But winning big games with TFC, winning in those moments, playing alongside those stars, being that supportive piece, that supportive cast member that, as you guys know, that's a real skill set, right? Like that is it takes intention and effort, and he has that.
Well, Gargs,
where do you? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, let me just add to that, because if you start him, which I think all three of us agree he should be on the field to start because they need him, then it allows you to have somebody to bring on that can change the game. And Royce has been really good as a sub, been less effective as a starter. Yep. I would almost do the same for Paintsel. I would almost start Fagundes out there
and let him run it.
Tell him to give you 45 minutes and then have some legs and something at the end of the game to really surprise you.
Dude, I'll tell you what, as an outside back, I would be terrified to see Joseph Paintsel in the 67th minute coming on to run down my throat for the next 30 minutes.
That's literally the worst idea you guys have had on this podcast, and that's saying a lot. A lot. You Muppets.
Well, hey, Dax,
you're not putting a $10 million superstar winger on the bench for the biggest game of the season just so he can run at the fullback for 30 minutes.
Why not?
Why not? Because he can win you the game in the first half.
So we did talk about this in text, and this was just via text. But my concern at halftime was
that he can't respond.
I can never talk on this freaking pod.
No, Gordo, I'll let you address it. I just want to set you up because you're not great with words. At halftime, we were talking about it because they make the substitution, and then exactly what you're saying, which is what we talked about, was, okay, where does Greg go when the game needs to be changed? And that's exactly what's going to happen in this final. It's going to need to be changed because of what we've seen with the New York Red Bulls. They are completely comfortable. So what do? Gordo, tell them what you do.
I already said what I would do. I already said what I would do, and then you took all the words out of my mouth for me because you're self-proclaimed better at speaking than
Gordo.
me. So good.
Oh my God.
Gordo,
you're an idiot.
You did make a good point, Gordo, and I want to piggyback off that. Your horrible point about Paintsel, notwithstanding, your point about Marco Royce is well noted and taken. I think Royce needs to play the role for the Galaxy that Gareth Bale played for LAFC. Super experienced guy who may or may not be 90 minutes fit, and I think it can be argued he's not 90 minutes fit. Maybe he's nursing an injury, maybe not. I mean, I don't know how...
How can he not be 90 minutes fit at this point in the season? Just because he's injured?
Maybe he's injured. I don't know, but I don't remember many games that he's played where he's played the full 90. I would be shocked if he played the full 90. But anyways, my point stands. If you need to change a game, start the game with your horses. You have to have Paintsel and Peck on the field, and Joveljic. All three of them. For me, that's non-negotiable. Now, how do you replace Puig? Well, Fagundes, Delgado, all these guys, they can play. But Royce, for me, has to come off the bench. He came. If you guys think back to when Atlanta played against LA, it was his debut, and obviously he was coming off a big trip from Germany, and I think he was just finishing up his season in the Bundesliga, but he came off the bench and he was fantastic. He played the last 30 minutes and he changed the game. He won the game for them by coming in and they scored, I think, twice against us in the last 30 minutes of the game. But to your point, let him play the Gareth Bale role. You need to have Joveljic and Peck and Paintsel on the field the entire game. Royce can be your joker. He can be the
okay. So then what are you're talking about? Fagundes in the center mid.
I'm talking about 10? You have to play Cerrillo and Delgado. I'm certain they will play there. Now,
agreed.
I think it depends on tactically what Greg wants to do, and if Greg wants to go with what he's been going with a pure number 10 in there, then Fagundes is the answer. Unless you want to play Peck in there. I think you take away too much of what Peck is good at if you put him in as a 10. And I think Fagundes...
Why would you put Peck in there? Same that kind of defeats your Paintsel argument.
I'm just going through, I guess, maybe the mindset and the mentality of maybe the options that Greg would go through. And I think Peck is a good enough player. You can play him anywhere in the front four, and I think he'd be fine. But he's been at his best on the right? And so you keep him there. Fagundes can do a job for you. Fagundes is a good player. He's mainly played out on the left for them. But if you bring him inside, you know what you're going to get tactically. You know you're going to get a good work rate out of him. You know that he can go for however long he needs to go for. And he's still got that creative element to his game. Now, it's not even close to the same as a Ricky Puig in there, but you need to have Delgado and Cerrillo on the field. And so I think going through all the different permutations, I mean, it's a big decision for Greg. And I don't think he'll do this, but maybe he'll think, look, if they're going to play with three center backs, I need two strikers up top. Maybe let's roll the dice and throw Miguel Berry up there and take a little bit of pressure off Joveljic.
Miguel Berry, at what point? Are you talking about starting Miguel Berry?
Maybe. I don't know.
And bringing Joveljic off the bench?
I put Paintsill as a withdrawn 9.
Okay. Play 4-4-2.
4-4-2. Paintsill as a withdrawn 9.
Has Greg done that at all this season?
I don't know, but Ricky Puig hasn't had a torn ACL, so I don't. They have played without Ricky Puig. Not a ton.
How did they play? They played in St. Louis.
They played in St. Louis, and they were awful. They were terrible.
Did they play a 4-4-2 with Miguel Berry up top with Joveljic? That answers your question then.
No, I should go back. Let's go back and look at that game.
I think
they didn't
was
play a
up there
4-4-2.
Was Joveljic not available?
It was. You know what it was? It was Royce's first game in the lineup.
So maybe he played at the 10.
They lost 2-1, I think. Who scored?
I think most likely scenario we see for MLS Cup, if we're moving on to the preview, is I think we see.
You're right. Paintsill played up top by himself.
That it's not effective. They can't do that. They need a striker.
They weren't effective. They were ineffective.
But you could play Paintsill with Joveljic and putting Fagundes on the left. And I was gonna suggest switching formations too, because if you think about it, they just can't play the same way without.
But that's my point. You can't play the same way without. You can't do it because he's such an instrumental part of how you play in your game model. There isn't a like replacement for him, not just on their roster, but in the league. So that's why I say, if Greg is going through his permutations tactically of like what things need to look like, okay, if we're going to have 65, 70% of the ball, if we're going to get into good areas on the field, if we're going to have to put in some crosses because they're really condensed in the middle of the field, we need another striker up there. We need someone to occupy another center back instead of just putting in hopeless crosses to Joveljic against 3 big center backs, right? Like that's what I'm trying to say is I don't know what he's going to do, but I think the most logical thing to do is just like for like replacement. You put Fagundes as the 10 and you let him go with Delgado starting next to Cerrillo, or you play a 4-4-2, you throw in Miguel Berry. I just don't think you'd play Royce from the start. I think if he's nursing an injury, you keep him on the bench. He's your wild card to change a game. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, you're definitely going up against a lot of numbers in New York that are completely comfortable and sitting back, and there's not going to be a ton of space in there.
New York's not going to change anything. They're going to play the exact same way. I don't think it matters that Puig is out. Red Bull will play with 3 center backs. They'll play with wing backs. And they'll play with Forsberg underneath 2 strikers. That's going to stay the same. So if you're Greg, right, how do you replace Ricky? It's going to have to be a group effort.
So let's flip this question. Gordo, how do you beat the Galaxy if you're New York Red Bull?
They have to score. They have to score first. They have to score first. It has to be similar to
set pieces.
Listen, if Seattle scored first, whole different ballgame, right? Then they probably win the game. But I mean, like Doug said, I don't anticipate them changing anything. They're gonna do what got them there, right? And so they're gonna. How are they gonna beat them?
Set pieces.
There you go. I don't know. I mean, Galaxy are still vulnerable in the back. There's no denying that. They are still vulnerable in the back. They're going to have to take what's going to give them. I think this game is going to be really difficult without Ricky. I just think he's that important to that team with all the other pieces that they have. They aren't going to operate the same way. So it's hard to say how to beat them without saying set pieces, which is an easy answer. Without knowing how the Galaxy are going to come out, right? If they come out in a 4-4-2, then they're going to have numbers in the middle that they can push their number 10 a little bit higher, and he's going to have room to get the ball in pockets and cause a lot of trouble. And they're going to have to whip the ball in. Crosses are where the crosses from anything, not just set pieces, are where the Galaxy are vulnerable. So they're going to have to be serving lots of crosses.
We just saw an MLS Cup preview. We just saw the Galaxy play against a strong defensive team and struggle with Ricky Puig. And I think Red Bull is just as strong of a defensive team as Seattle is. Maybe not at the top level.
I don't know. They defend differently, though.
Okay, Carlos Coronel, Stephen Fry, two hot goalkeepers.
Yep.
Red Bull has 3 shutouts, 3 clean sheets, and 4 playoff games. One of those coming against the Columbus Crew.
No, for sure. I'm just saying they defend differently.
I'm just telling you, Red Bull, this is where I'm at with Red Bull. They are very comfortable with who they are and in their own skin right now. They know they want the game ugly. They don't care how it looks. They're going to play direct. They're not going to try to play out of the back. Like, they are going to do whatever is necessary to win. And we have seen repeatedly in the playoffs, they are very dangerous if they score first. If they score first, I think the Galaxy are in trouble.
All right, Mr. Red Bull. Are you taking Red Bull?
Oh, just flat out, boom, right there.
Yeah. You taking them? Right now, it's Monday. It's only Monday. Monday. There's a lot that needs to happen, but you need to place a bet right this second. I don't know what the line is. Are you taking New York? I mean, the most significant chess piece is off the board.
I was leaning towards taking Red Bull even before the Puig ACL, and now, yes.
Wow, really?
I am taking Red Bull merely for the fact that Seattle showed us the blueprint. I mean, this Galaxy team, you guys said it. They were an attacking juggernaut. I mean, just wiped the floor with Colorado, wiped the floor with Minnesota. And I think Seattle put a little bit more confidence in Red Bull that they can go there and defend and not.
Yeah, but Colorado and Minnesota are not Seattle. That was not the same. Colorado, inexperienced and young and inconsistent. Minnesota, right. Who the hell knows what they don't even know who they are yet. I mean, they have a couple pieces in there, but not Seattle.
I think that Red Bull is in a great run of form right now. I think they're secure in who they are. I think they don't care how the game looks. I think finals, everyone's going to be nervous. And typically when teams are nervous, I think the advantage goes to the team who's willing to make the game uglier and the team who's willing to fight and win second balls and foul and make the game a little bit scrappy and a little bit dirty. And that is Red Bull. Like, that just is. Ricky Puig, it's a different story. But we've already talked about there is no like-for-like replacement for him. If Paintsel and Peck get frustrated and don't get involved in the game, then Jovic is starved of service, and I think he's going to be eaten up if he's alone up there by those Red Bull center backs. I think Red Bull's going to win the game. I'm taking the Red Bulls.
And that's a lot for you to say. Not that you're taking Red Bull, but that you were leaning towards Red Bull prior to Puig's injury. I would never, ever in a million years have said that. I thought after having watched the first 45 minutes, it didn't really matter who was coming out of the Western Conference. They were going to smash Red Bull in the final on the West Coast.
Is that still how you feel now?
I don't feel the exact same way. But I wanted to throw this to you, Gordo. We're 10 years to the day, December 7th, 2014. You and I warmed up together in MLS Cup in Los Angeles. 10 years to the day, the LA Galaxy are hosting another final. There are so many eerie similarities to this. The New England Revolution come out with really kind of nothing to lose. They have a great midfielder in Jermaine Jones. New York Red Bull has a great midfielder in Forsberg. They were a defensive-minded team, gritty, not nowhere. They were not New York Red Bull, but that's who their identity was. A lot of the things that Dax is talking about, the nerves, like it was Galaxy's game to win. Nobody expected Revs to win. Are you seeing similar storylines to this game, or does this feel different?
It feels exactly the same. It really does. It feels exactly the same. Yeah, I mean, we were in the same position in the Western Final. I think we lost on the last day. We beat Seattle in exciting fashion, just the same. I know the game wasn't necessarily exciting, but you saw when the whistle blew how much it meant to these Galaxy players, right? They all dropped 100%. To their knees. Yep. It was by no means did any player on that field expect to get to the final this year, which is pretty spectacular what they have accomplished. What I will say is it in these moments, like I mentioned earlier, it takes a special moment. It's going to take a special moment. I don't anticipate many goals in this game unless somebody scores early and the game has to open up and Red Bull has to push, and and the game needs to be open. If the game opens up, I still think that Galaxy have the pieces to pick them apart. But if they can be comfortable, not concede early, it's going to be very much like we saw in the Western Final. I still think that Peck, in the incredible run that he has, we didn't see much from him. They shut him down in the Western Final. I think he's going to find a way, and hopefully Greg can get creative in how to find him the ball more often, because he's the guy now. He is the guy. Joveljic is going to sit in the box, and he's a killer, so he can nick one at any point in the game. I mean, any striker can, but I think that Peck's going to be the guy and the difference maker in this, and I'm taking the Galaxy. I think it's going to be a 1-0, just like we saw in 2010 or 14.
I think that there's a difference. There's one difference that I see from our group in 2014 to this group, and I think a lot of it is just veteran experience. I thought that our team was heavy in vets that had been there, had won. You got Landon, you got Robbie, you got Omar, you got AJ, you got Gordo. There are a number of players, Juninho, Sarvas, like that had already won and had already been through these games. The Galaxy, this group doesn't have a ton of those guys. And yeah, they might have experience playing in big time games elsewhere, but they don't have MLS playoff experience, which is different. It's a different animal. If I think back to my mindset, and you can comment on this, there was no point in time when we found our stride where I realistically thought that we were going to lose a game. There wasn't a minute, and it didn't matter if we were down 3-0 or up 5-0 or down a man, I always thought we were going to win. I was that confident with our group, whether we had every horse on the field or we had already made 6 changes or whatever. We also were not going into an MLS Cup Final down Landon Donovan, which this Galaxy team is going into a final down Ricky Puig. Had we been going into the final in 2014 having suffered a loss of a Landon Donovan or a Robbie Keane, does your mindset change in that game for you?
At the time, no, but if we lost Robbie and the season that he had, I mean, it would have been different. It would have been different. And he scores the goal, right? So it's rightfully so. So yeah, probably if we lost one of them, I still would have been confident in our group because I think we got lucky. I think that New England beat the Red Bulls, right? Dax, is that the year you guys got upset?
Yep.
If we were playing the Red Bulls and we were down one of those players, I think I would have been really nervous. But knowing that I knew we could beat New England, I knew we should have beat New England. And with that point being said, I know New England had a run in the playoffs too, but the Galaxy should win. They're a better team. They should win on paper, off paper, given the whole season as a guide. They're a better team, so they should win, and that's the way I felt. But if we were playing Red Bull in 2014, I would have been really nervous.
And I think that's what Gargs is getting at, is that there's a psychological aspect to this that we haven't really touched on. And it's, hey, by the way, your most creative player, the engine of your team, the engine that drives every good attacking thing that you guys do forward, he's not there anymore. And not only that, but he's out for next year too, which obviously they're not thinking about that. But for me, that's going to weigh on you a little bit. Like psychologically, let's say, let me give you an example. The first couple minutes of the game, Red Bull's pressing the life out of you, which they will. They're not going to sit back. They will press. Let's say your midfield has a couple giveaways. Let's say Red Bull nicks a couple second balls, goes in and has a couple chances on goal from your careless giveaways or your turnovers because you don't have the quality in the middle there anymore. The doubt that creeps in knowing we don't have this guy on the field, which, by the way, you give Puig the ball anywhere on the field, he will not lose it. He's just too good of a passer and he's too good of a dribbler. There's no like-for-like replacement for that. The doubt creeps in. Now, do you play the same way? Do you change up how you play? Are you still going to try to have 65, 70% possession? Is Greg going to tell them tactically, let's sit back? Let's let Red Bull have the ball because they can't hurt us when they have possession, and maybe
they don't know what to do with it.
So my point is, psychologically, losing a player like that, it's going to have an effect on the game, whether you think it or not. It will.
I think there's two keys.
Dax. And the difference is, Gargs, to answer your question, is the reason it's really different than losing a Landon or a Robbie, because we knew Robbie wasn't gonna run during the game. He was gonna sit up there and he was gonna be dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. And Landon is ultimately pretty much the same way. Landon was a killer his whole career, but between the boxes, a few moments we knew in 2010 the game was going to be won 14 by everyone else. It was going to be locked down by the great back line that we had, yourself, AJ, Omar, and Todd. And then the midfield was Ishii, Juninho, Sarvis, and Robbie. That's where the meat and potatoes was of that game. We were going to play the game, right? And Landon and Robbie were going to have the special moment and take it home for us, right? This is different because Ricky just has the ball. It's a record-breaking year. We've never seen anybody have the ball as much as this guy has the ball.
Literally 150 times a game.
150 times. I mean, he's on the ball constantly. It's like it's going to be a shock. They're not going to know what to do with the ball because he's the one that penetrates. He was the one that gives everybody their opportunities and gets his own because he breaks the line in the middle by his amazing dribbling, and he's the best dribbler or on-the-ball dribbler I've seen in this league in a very long time, if anybody else. Mm-hmm. And then it opens up. If nobody's there to do that, it's going to be so easy for the Red Bull, who's, Dax has already said it, who's really good at defense. And it's going to be so easy to keep the Galaxy in front of them. It's going to be just a different game. And that's why it's different, losing Ricky versus losing a Landon or a Robbie.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the mentality side of it is, and the confidence is different. You touched on it. You said you could see the euphoria of this, and you could see, I think, some of the, the elation of these guys that were maybe not, they were somewhat surprised that they had won. There wasn't an expectation. So now you pop out of that. I think there's two keys to this game. It's Greg Vanney and it's Marco Reus. I think those are the two keys. It's how well, because now, to be fair, Red Bull has no idea how the Galaxy is going to line up. Yep. They have no clue. They don't know. And they don't know how they're going to play. Greg has a lot of options at his disposal about how he wants to sit back. Does he want to sit back? Does he still want to go to it? There's a lot of tactical wrinkles. There's also, if you are talking about somebody that has experience, that has the ability to take a game over, Royce has that ability. Can he do it? You guys have both commented on it. They're maybe not 90 minutes. Maybe he's not 90 minutes fresh. Maybe he's a late game sub. Maybe he is the outlet. We don't know. But I think the two of them, how he approaches the game, how he sets his group up, and then where he inserts Royce and the effect that he can have on that game is going to be what determines this.
Can I take you guys back to real quickly one of the finals that I watched and covered for MLS? Toronto FC against Seattle. I forgot which year it was, but it was when Greg was in Toronto. Everyone was so sure about what Toronto and Seattle were going to do tactically. Greg came out, and they hadn't played in a diamond all year, and he played in a diamond in the MLS Cup Final. Mm-hmm. And it caught everyone off guard, everyone by surprise. And I tell you what, Toronto dominated. They dominated Seattle, fully deserved to win. I think they won 2-0. And the tactical masterclass that Greg put on that day gives me a lot of confidence that he will figure out the best way to line this team up without Ricky. I'm not doubting that, right? And so it's not like it's easy to pick against the Galaxy, because I do think Greg is a wonderful coach. He is one of the best coaches in MLS. And thinking back to that final and what he did tactically to completely change everything, the narrative was really, really special. So he has that in his bag.
I'm taking the Galaxy. I know you guys didn't ask, but I'm taking the Galaxy. I think I think for all of the reasons stated. I just think that Galaxy has too much class. They have too much talent on the field. I think they're going to weather the heartbreak and the loss of Puig. They have time to figure that out. Greg is going to galvanize them and give them a game plan. And then they're going to go out and execute. And the other thing that we haven't really touched on is this is a cross-country game for Red Bull. They got to fly from Orlando back to New York, then across the country to LA, while LA is sitting and waiting for them in a day game. Saturday, 1 o'clock, right, Gordo? Is that the time? Saturday, 1 o'clock. So it'll be interesting. We got one Red Bull, two Galacticos on record. I love it. Major League Journeymen. We'll see you out there.